Our next speaker is someone that I've gotten to be very close friends with, I feel, over the last year and a half. Someone that I probably would have never crossed paths with if tragedy had not struck her family and her life. She's become not only a friend, but also an advocate, just like us, but she doesn't get paid for it. But she's become an advocate for victims nationally. As she said Friday when we were together, out of necessity, she has become a regional advocate, a national advocate. Her story that she's going to tell you here tonight has touched lives, I've got chill bumps, has touched lives across the nation. Her husband drives a truck, and he has a picture on the side of his truck. And even in Arizona, people have said, I know that girl. I've seen her story. So out of tragedy, there has been good. There has been a lot of good, maybe a lot of lives saved. And I want to introduce to you my friend, Tara Woodlee.
I'd like to say that, that this is a beautiful story I could give you. Every parent wants to give a beautiful story of their child. Beautiful grandchildren, what grades, they make, and how great they are in cheerleading and drill team and softball and leading school plays. Ashleigh was all of that. A student. And she was the type of girl that you would never, ever figure would get into a relationship that would be a violent, abusive relationship, because she was very strong-willed. I mean, this is a kid that you could, if you have people in your life, even friends, that one friend who just, when they come into the room, they're just so bubbly, they're contagious, and you just can't help but to smile, but at the same time, in the next breath, you want to choke them because they've done something to you. And you think, settle down, but they're just so full of life. That was this child. She didn't take anything from nobody, including her mother. And that's how I raised her, pretty much, because I, too, am a survivor of domestic violence. Her biological father abused me, and I had to break free of that. But she saw enough that it affected her, because her father just once put his hands on her. And it was enough to change her life on how she looked at men the rest of her life. She continually picked men looking for the love she never found in her father, who were just like him. And as she did that, her self-esteem grew smaller and smaller till she was just ripe for that person they call the narcissistic personality. The one that comes on real strong with I love you, you are beautiful, you are wonderful, just like Kara was talking about. And he did all of that. And we thought he was wonderful in the beginning, but then all of a sudden you have within 1 month they're in love. He wants her to move in. He wants to isolate her. He wants her to quit work. He wants her to himself and nobody else. Well, that's not going to happen with this kind of a girl. She's too outgoing, too many friends. So there's going to be confrontation. And then the confrontation did start. It started with him breaking her cell phone because he didn't want her calling and talking to people he didn't like. He took over her Facebook, unfriended all her male friends, because those were people she didn't need to talk to. Unfriended her girlfriends that he deemed was too slutty for her to be talking to. Anybody he did not approve of, that was it. They were gone. And then the cell phones kept breaking, and she would make excuses. We were, her father and I and her sister were seeing the red flags. After all, we'd seen it before, in her biological father. So Ashleigh we knew for sure all of a sudden one day that this was going on because she calls me screaming and crying from a bathroom. He has slapped her, and they're at a friend's house. Mind you, Ashleigh should be 21 years old today. She should be in Southeastern with y'all. She was attending Grayson. This is the year she should have, she intended to be in classes with y'all. She calls me from a bathroom. He slapped her, and he's put a cigarette out in her face. And nobody there is willing to do anything about it. 6 friends, and they're all too frightened to call the police, say anything, or do anything about it. She's calling me screaming and crying, and I'm trying to figure out where she is, and the phone goes dead. I get a call from him. It's all a mistake. They've been drinking. This is just, she's over-exaggerating it. I flicked the cigarette at her, and it accidentally hit her in the face. I didn't burn her. And some of the friends of his got on the phone and lied for him, saying she was lying. Till finally I said, well, I'm coming out there unless I hear from my daughter. They put her on the phone. She swore she was lying. She was drunk. And I left it at that, thinking when I see her in a couple of days, this is not going to be over. We're going to have a discussion about this, because I knew something was not right. Unbeknownst to me, it escalated from there. Joshua, her fiance, put her head through the bathroom wall, drug her around in front of his friends and her friends, nobody calling the police. And then when someone finally said, hey, that's enough, we're going to call the police, he began stabbing himself with a penknife, saying he was going to kill himself if they called the police. So they didn't call the police. And this was the life she started having to live for several months. She would lie to us about what was going on. She would minimize it. Until she got pregnant. When she got pregnant, the abuse escalates. And some of the statistics you heard, this is one I'm going to put in there for you. When you get pregnant, it does not end it. It makes it worse, because they feel they have the right now. They have you in a position where you can never break free, because that child belongs to them as well. They forever have you tied in a bond with them. And so they feel even more free to abuse you when you're pregnant. The statistics are that more pregnant women die in domestic violence disputes than in car accidents or health-related incidents. So while you're pregnant, you're more at risk of dying or being murdered from your partner than from anything else. Ashleigh and I talked about that, and she was aware of it, and she came home for a while. But of course, he said he'd quit drinking. He would be a better man. He would get a job. He would take care of this baby. And she wanted to believe him, so she went back. She was back all of about 2 weeks before she disappeared, and nobody could find her. We were hysterically looking for her, and come to find out that she ran off to a friend who was hiding her. She left a note. She figured he would read me the note, and I would figure out she's just in hiding right now. I mean, she even said that in the note. When you read this to my mother, she'll know I'll contact her in a couple days. I'm not going back to my parents. Don't look for me there. Because when he did come, when she did come home that 2 weeks prior, he came there with a friend and tried to break into my home to get her to come back. So she had taken off, and he didn't tell us, so we're issuing a BOLO alert looking for our child. Believe me, you never want your parents to be in that position, because I thought he already killed her. For a week, we had no clue. We were plastering pictures of her everywhere, had no idea where she was. She finally turned up, and somebody let her know, hey, they're looking for you. And the only way, of course, you can get a bolo alert released is the officers have to come and talk to you. So I told her on the phone, call the police, have them come check you out. And she said, okay. And I told her, I said, call me. I want to talk to the officer, because we were an hour and a half from her. This happened over in Kingston. We live towards Bonham, Texas. Said, I want to talk to this officer when you get done with him, and I want to see you immediately. We're going to meet. And she said, okay. And we come to find out the officer got on the phone and said, even though it had been 5 days since she left him, they were going to go ahead and press felony assault charges. She still had bruises, and he was taking pictures, and so we came running to her. What I saw was not pretty. She had a black eye. She had bruises on her side. She had fingerprint bruises all up and down her arms, and her wrist had bruises all the way around her wrist. And I didn't push what had happened at that point because she was still hysterical. All she would tell me at that moment was that he had beat me because I had decided to leave him because he was drinking again, and he said I couldn't go with that baby. And he threw me on the floor and kicked me, so I left. About a week before she died, she told me the full story. She wanted to leave, and he said no. He punched her in the face, dead on, and then proceeded to shake her around like a rag doll, throw her down, kicked her in the stomach at least 5 times, telling her she was not going to take that baby. Dragged her by the hair, put her head through the wall, and then tied her up in the bedroom and left her tied up for 24 hours and wouldn't release her until she agreed to get back together with him. And the only way he believed she did that was she had to give him sex, otherwise she would not be untied. And I'm sorry, as a parent, I don't care what she agreed to, that's rape. She had to agree to that to be free. And the next day, as soon as he left work, she ran for her life. She ran for her life for a month and a half, hiding from him from friend to friend. She wouldn't come home because he told her he would kill the whole family if she came home. So she had friends who were trying to help her, and the officers told her to stay in county so they could catch him better, and that's what she was trying to do. We had hooked her up with Anna as an advocate. We had charges pending. We were sure they were going to get him. It doesn't end there. You know, people think, I'm going to tell you, young people, you think, you know, that can't happen to me because I won't get in that kind of relationship. It won't affect me. He threatened her work. He called her co-workers. He threatened to kill everyone she worked with and burn the place down around them. And the sad thing is, this happens so often out in the world that 1/4 of the victims are bystanders in domestic violence murders. They're a friend, a co-worker, another family member who happened to be there when it all went down. Ashleigh made national news in Cosmopolitan because they did a story on how violence affects the workplace, because her workplace was so shattered by it. We had realized that it had gotten so dangerous. He was sitting outside of her house calling her, telling her he had found her, telling her what she was wearing, that the police included stalking and harassing and terroristic threats. They were including all of these charges to try to get him. And finally, we had Anna and another advocate had talked her into, she needed to go into a shelter and go into hiding and leave everything behind. She was even going to change her last name so he couldn't find her. She even wasn't going to list him on the birth certificate of the baby because she didn't want to deal with him in court over custody. It was that bad. We had talked her into doing that, and she said, this was on a Thursday, she said, well, these people at work have stood by me and have loved me and didn't fire me. Let me finish out my work week on Saturday and I will go. We didn't make it to Saturday, people. It was July 13th last year, a Friday the 13th. I say it's the unluckiest day of my life. It was the unluckiest day of her life, that's for sure. A friend who was his roommate, Joshua Mahaffey's friend, Joshua Scott, went and bought a gun and decided to help his friend hunt down my daughter. They didn't have a vehicle, so he shot his mother's boyfriend and killed him and stole his vehicle, stole the money he had in his pocket, drove 3 hours to pick up Joshua from where he was hiding from the police, came 3 hours back to hunt my daughter down. One of them broke in through the front door while the other one came in the back door, and she had no place to run. So she shut herself in a bathroom. Her 3 roommates were home. But everything happened so quickly. I will tell you, from the last text message, she sent a friend saying she was on her way to pick them up for work because she was walking out the door to go to work. And the time I called her to be sure everything was okay and got told she had been shot was 3 minutes. Less than 3 minutes is all it took for him to break in the front door, break in the bathroom door. He shot her first in the shoulder, and she fell to the floor, and while she was at the floor, she tried to block the second shot, and he shot her in the head. And she didn't die there. He, in an instant, turned the gun on himself and shot himself and killed himself. And the roommate who was helping him had gathered up the 3 roommates and were threatening all their lives. And the only reason they are not dead today was Mahaffey fell on the gun in that small bathroom, and the roommate couldn't get in there and get to it. He couldn't lift him. The gun was pinned between this man who shot my daughter dead, who had fallen on her and her body, so he couldn't get to it. They care flighted Ashleigh to Plano. She was 4 months pregnant by this time. We spent hours praying, as every parent would, friends coming. We got told she was not going to recover. So they were going about it in a way where they thought they could put her on machines and maybe go long enough for that baby to be taken C-section, at least, 6 weeks. That didn't happen either. The baby's life, she couldn't hold on. Doctors came in and told us as families to say our goodbyes. We have a large family. Came in 2 by 2 having to say goodbye. This face you see here, it's the most beautiful face I think in the world. And that hospital was unrecognizable. I couldn't bury her in her beauty. Her eyes were so swollen and black and blue. The gunshot powder all over her face broke blood vessels everywhere. Her face was so swollen, it was not the face of my daughter. Her arm, from trying to block that shot, was burnt clear back to her elbow, and they had to bag it for evidence. I couldn't even touch that hand. They had a sonogram technician come in for a final sonogram to check on the baby. Her little heartbeat was almost just totally not there. By this time, it was only me in the room with her and the sonogram technician. And I actually saw through the sonogram the last heartbeat of my baby granddaughter. When that happened, I asked everybody to leave me, all doctors, everybody. And I knew at that moment she had been fighting up until that time for that baby. So I whispered in her ear and tried to find a place that wasn't soaked in blood to kiss her. And said, honey, if you're holding on for your baby, it's okay, the baby's gone. And you can go be with your baby, and mommy will be okay. It's not what I wanted to say, but I knew it was what was best for her. Within that 15 seconds after that, she immediately left this world, peacefully and in silence. She coded, and we let her go. Because, they had already declared her brain dead. They were going to take her off the machines anyway. So we let her go her way at that time. And as sad as this is, and as horrible as it is for me to have to tell it, within 2 weeks of that time, after she died, I had about 20 of her little girlfriends contact me saying they were suffering the same abuse that she was suffering and they didn't know how to get out. And I felt like if you knew my daughter, it would be, Ashleigh going, Mom, here's my friends, do something about it, So I did. I did something about it. And I started helping them and getting them in touch with other advocates in their areas and with shelters in their areas. And then it took off from there. I finally just got on my knees one day and just prayed about a month after she died and said, God, whatever you want me to do with this, I'm going to do with it. You just send it to me. And what happened, I could never imagine. A Facebook page in her honor turned to over 4,000 people in a year. I have helped save, that I know of, over 300 girls with her story, and into shelters, and into, with advocates in the courts, where they can get out of that relationship and they don't have to fear like she feared. I don't have to hear in their voice that terror that she had. And that makes every bit of it worth it. To know that she has that kind of a legacy. And so it has just grown from there. And the thing I like to give everybody is that this is a message of hope. And that's what she would want to everyone to know. She had hope of a new life. She had hope of a life with that baby. She was seeking everything she could do, and people were offering her that hope. One person may have stopped her life, but they cannot stop that hope for a better future, a future without violence, a future without you having to fear. And that's what I want people to take away from my daughter's legacy. And that's why I started a foundation in her honor. It's called the Ashleigh's Patience Project, named after her and my granddaughter. And like I said before, there's been articles in magazines, and now they're even going to do a documentary over her beautiful life, hoping that we can place it in shelters and in other people's hands that will make people see that your life is worth it. It's worth not having to deal with abuse. And even if you don't think you would make that choice, with a 1 in 4 statistic, somebody in your family, somebody as a friend in their lifetime is going to experience it. Do you really know what to do? Do you know how to handle it? Do you know who to call? It's something that you don't want to have to be prepared for, but nowadays we do. So in final thought, I'd just like to say that, you young people here that are, and older people, but you have the chance to influence the relationships that you see around you. If you see friends in this kind of trouble, help them. If you don't have to, if your best friend is treating his girlfriend this way, you can tell him no more. Don't do this. I'm not going to play basketball with you if you're going to beat your girlfriend like that. You have a voice. You have an influence, an impact. Tell your girlfriend, hey, it's not right to be stalking your ex on that Facebook. Knock that off. Because these things escalate to things that you never dreamed would ever happen. Thank you.